a look at a local women's conference, a testimony of God's goodness, and a pastor's side hustle. All that and more coming up now on Joy in the City, True Stories. Joy in the City is a program highlighting people and organizations having an impact on our city. All too often, we hear about the problems and dysfunction in our culture, but we are coming with a different approach as we take a look at the good things going on right here in our community. I'm Lindsay Irvin, and you're about to see what God is doing in our city. This past April, there was a conference held for women and teens called Daughters Conference. We had the opportunity to talk with the founder, Bethany Marshall, and a member of her team, Arin Hunter, about what this conference is all about.
So we just concluded the 7th annual Daughters Conference, which is crazy to me that we've got 7 of those under our belt. Well, you do. So for everybody out there, just explain a little bit about what Daughters Conference is.
Yeah, Daughters Conference is a conference where we gather and we unite daughters from all generations. That's the heart behind it. We want to see unity with the generations. And so each year, that is what we do. We gather girls from infant age to beyond grandmother age. It's just a place where everyone can come together and worship the Lord, because I believe so strongly that the presence of the Lord is for everybody. And there is just a beautiful thing that happens when women gather together from all generations. And so it is a time where women can gather and to learn to stand firm in their God-given identity and what God has for them.
Now, the name Daughters Conference has a meaning, and you came up with that in a very unique way. I want you to explain that whole journey to us, because not everybody's a mom, but everybody is a daughter.
Yeah.
So kind of go through that process with us.
Yeah, so about 8 years ago, the Lord was stirring something new in my heart. He was growing my heart for women's ministry, and I just didn't know what that truly looked like in that season of my life. And one day the Lord spoke to me, and he said, Bethany, gather my daughters, and I prayed on that for a while. And I went to my husband and I said, Micah, I believe God's asking me to gather women together. I don't know what that looks like. And I said, what do you think if I do a conference? Do you think that's something that I could do? Because at that point in my life, I had never done anything like this before, never dreamt of something like this before. And so, of course, my husband was like, yeah, go for it. And so then I began to think about, what should I call it? Have you ever had something in front of you the whole time, like the name of something, but you didn't remember or think, oh yeah, that's what it should be called. So I thought of all these like names, and it just never stuck. And so I began to pray about it, and the Lord was like, remember what I told you to do? Gather my daughters. And so Daughters Conference is something that I believe God is calling globally. Right? Globally, he wants his daughters to come and to discover who they really are in him.
Now, Daughters Conference has expanded. It started in one sanctuary, but now it's in many.
Yes.
So talk to us about how that expansion has taken place.
So it's grown significantly since we first started in 2016. And in 2018, we had the opportunity to bring Daughters Conference to Pittsburgh. So that was our first year we were able to do 2 Daughters Conferences, one in the spring and one in the fall. And at that point, we were excited for the opportunity, and that was an open door that continued in 2019. Then COVID hit. But this year, we are able to go to Johnstown in September, and then at Pittsburgh again in October, which we are so excited about. This is something that we don't seek. This is something that we don't even ask. These are people asking Daughters Conference to come to them. These are doors that are being opened without us even having to ask that question, would you consider us coming to your church? This is something that people are sensing, that this is a movement. This is something that God is doing, and it's been such a powerful thing each and every year that people are saying, we want Daughters Conference to come. So we're blessed. We're blessed to be able to be on the road.
So what actually takes place in Daughters Conference? For people who've never been there, what is the process? What is a Daughters Conference? What's the meat of the Daughters Conference?
The meat of the Daughters Conference is worship and the Word. That's something that we focus on, and don't really create much other than that atmosphere of the worship and the Word. That is why we exist. That's why we're there that night. It's a one-night event where we do have Daughters Conference apparel that we sell, and we have some fun, areas to take pictures and things like that, because we want women to gather. We want women to just kind of put a mark on that year of, this is what the theme was, this is, who we came with, and create those memories. But we want to protect the environment and the atmosphere of just that worship and the Word that is given that night.
Now, you've also expanded, because Daughters Conference has expanded, you've expanded in staff, which is why we have Arin here. So Arin, tell us what your newfound position is in Daughters Conference.
Yes, so Bethany and I agreed that I would be the Daughters Conference coordinator. So pretty much I am like I make everything pretty.
That you do.
Yes. So I'm like the creative mind. Bethany comes up with like the theme for the years, and then she, asks me to pray about it. And then once we have solidified what that theme is, then, my mind starts to work, and I'm like, okay, so this is my initial thought, and I think this is what we should go for. This is the colors I think we should use. And then, everything is obviously like a mutual decision, but we're pretty much always on the same page. So yeah, I do set like the stage design, and then I help her with shirt designs and everything, anything she needs. I'm just like her right hand lady. So.
And it's nice to have a mutual friend to kind of bounce things off of and help share some of those moments when you just can't make a decision. Now you guys are wearing Daughters Conference apparel. So kind of flick your hair because you have a brand.
Yeah,
you have a brand. Yeah,
logo.
Yeah, which is, I think, is really awesome. So hopefully down the road, when people see that, it's your brand. So Bethany, what are some challenges that you come up against in preparing for Daughters Conference and getting it going? Because it's a big project.
It is a big project. Some of the challenges are budget. We couldn't do Daughters Conference without financial support. We want to be able to keep it free admission, free registration for women. 'Cause there's so many other things out there that you pay for, and that, sometimes you just don't want to pay for another thing, right? So we want this to be a ministry that blesses women, that they can bring their, baby or their, young daughter to it and not have to worry about, I have to pay for her ticket, I have to pay for her ticket. We want to be able to keep it. So that sometimes is something that we pray and we ask for support, and we're blessed to have some core churches in our area that donate to us yearly a gift, and that really becomes our budget for that year, and also seed money for whatever's up ahead. So this year, with having 2 more conferences happening in the fall, our donations help to mobilize and to make those things possible, because it does cost money to be able to do. That's one of the biggest I think challenges with conferences. It takes funding, it takes money, and so we ask for people to donate, but we also have our apparel that we sell, and then all that goes towards Daughters Conference too. And then we also do a gift a shirt to a teenager. So if someone doesn't want to buy a shirt that year, they can buy a shirt to then bless a teenager that attends Daughters Conference. And that's just something we started over the past year or so, and it's just really taken off. The teens love to get a free shirt when they get here.
Now, how many did you give away this year?
It was 15.
It was a good amount. Right. Now, moving forward in the future, do you have any big plans? Where are we headed with Daughters Conference?
We have a possibility, hopefully maybe next year, to go out of state. So that is a discussion that's happening right now, and I'm excited to see what God does with that possibility. So to be able to go outside of Pennsylvania, that would be awesome. So, but we just want this to be God's heart, and leading and whatever the plans, we want it to align with God's will. So that is my heart for it. I know this is something that God's entrusted and he has blessed over the years. So I want to be a good steward of that. So I just am so amazed every year what God does and how it grows and the testimonies that come. I mean, it's just, we could sit here all day and I could share with you testimonies of healing, testimonies of the heart being restored from hurt and bitterness, promises fulfilled, the night of worship. I mean, I believe, like you shared with me a story during worship, how the Lord ministered to your heart that night. And these are the hidden things that only Jesus knows about. But when we're in the presence of God, there's such a healing that can happen in our own lives that makes it special.
Absolutely. Now, you guys are beautiful women, strong, talented, and I have no doubt this thing is going to go to higher and higher and higher heights. And we're there for you and praying for that success. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.
Kick off summer by joining faith-filled believers from all across the city for Saturate Altoona. This is a free summer worship series unifying believers throughout our community. You're invited to join worshipers every Sunday night during the month of June at Heritage Plaza, beginning at 6:30 p.m. You'll hear from 12 different faith leaders of several denominations and musicians from many churches. You don't want to miss Saturate Altoona every Sunday night in June at Heritage Plaza in downtown Altoona.
Recently, we were blessed by hearing a testimony from a man about the goodness of God in his life. Listen as he shares his story.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for being here. I want to back up, do a little bit of the backstory leading up to February 2020.
It would basically entail my entire life. I was a raging alcoholic and unhireable, unmarriable, undateable, pretty much living from dollar to dollar. Beer to beer. I knew where my next dollar was going. It was a beer. And had enough. And I sought out help and found that help in Altoona here at Cove Forge.
Okay, so you went to Cove Forge, but that's not where you had your...
I graduated from Cove Forge, went to Pine Ridge, and had a stroke.
Wow. And then from there...
Altoona Hospital for a week. During recovery, they sent me to a skilled care nursing home where I was at for 2 days and contracted COVID pneumonia before COVID was cool. And back in the hospital for another week and a half, I feel. And then I wound up at through a different church, Bald Eagle Methodist. A lady up there suggested that I go to Epworth, which was really close to her, so I could get anything I needed at any time, except for COVID happened, so I never got anything.
So we're going to back up for a minute. You actually coded in the ambulance. We lost you.
Correct, yes.
Did they tell you how long you were?
They may have, I don't remember.
But you definitely coded in the ambulance.
Yes.
Were you alive by the time you got to the hospital?
Correct, I was.
You were. And what happened? How did you know at that time?
Everything was white and I had no pain. And then life happened. I came out of it and everything hurt. And I proceeded to argue with the ambulance driver that I did not have a stroke.
Was there a moment where you thought, this is it?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm done.
Yep.
And then when you realized that you weren't done, did you realize at that moment that that was a God thing?
I knew it was a God thing. I have always been that guy, but that proved it. I mean, I always say he has a pretty good sense of humor, and you may not get everything you ask for or pray for, but you get it in his terms, the way he sees fit on the daily.
So when you realized that you were no longer gone, that you were back with us again, and you immediately realized it was God, was there a heart change, or did that take time?
at no time, it took time, but at no time did he put more on me than I could handle. I don't think. He put people in my path that I needed in my path. He took people away from my path that needed to get out of my way very easily, and it was to no pain of mine. Everything was a help. Everybody at this church has been a great help that I've ran across so far.
So you went from the hospital to rehab.
Correct.
And I believe I was told that the rehab actually reached out to the Foundry.
Correct. I had a fellow guy at Pine Ridge that had went to the Foundry that had reached out to me, and he had mentioned the Foundry, and I had talked to my counselor or caseworker, whatever the case may be, at the home, and they reached out to Pastor John, and Pastor John reluctantly reached out to me, and history's made there.
And God was actually working in your favor on that, because he
He's-
typically doesn't take guys from
No, he was very
that
concerned.
sort of rehab, you know.
He was because I came from the alcoholic rehab, but I had that midway point at the nursing home. I was a really bad mess. I could barely make it up steps when he took me in, and he was very concerned about the liability on his end. But him being the guy he is,
Absolutely, he's a big heart.
he
Yeah.
has a huge heart. I can't say enough about the guy.
So what happened in your life after you went to the Foundry?
I did obviously the best I could there, follow up on all my medical appointments, which pretty much took my life. I got a part-time job, which turned into an overtime-a-week job, which turned into a state job, which turned into I'm now a truck driver for Amazon.
Awesome. That is so awesome.
And
So,
don't miss a beat.
and you have your own place now?
I have my own place, yeah.
Yeah. Now, what would you say to those out there that when they think that it's hopeless, that there's nowhere
It's-
else to go?
I don't feel that it's ever hope. You may think it's hopeless, but you have to want it. And I don't think that people that say that they're humble are humble. I think that people that admit to God that they're humble are humble. And when you're at the bottom of the barrel, you may not think you are, but sometimes you are.
Do you think you've come a long way from that guy that is not marryable, not hireable, not trustable, not...
People see it in me. I'm very hard. The biggest judge of me is me, I feel. And, God's forgiven me, obviously. He's given me so many opportunities in the last couple of years. It's crazy. Yeah, I've come a long way, I feel.
I feel you have too. It's an amazing story. It's an amazing transformation, and thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
This segment is brought to you by Harry's Construction, whose motto is, "If you can dream it, we can create it." They are the kitchen and bath design experts, so call Harry's Construction for all your remodeling needs.
Devin Spradling, the associate pastor of Champion Life Church in Altoona, shares with us about his side hustle as the owner of a professional cleaning business.
Thank you, Devin, for joining me today. We've been doing a series on different ministries and pastors with a side hustle of some sort. And I know some of the things that you do, but before we get into your side hustle, talk a little bit about the ministry, where you're at and what you do.
Well, I'm the associate pastor of Champion Life Church. It's in downtown Altoona. And I've been the associate pastor there, just celebrated 5 years. But overall have been involved with the church for just about 9 years now. Someone had invited me one day at school, and I hadn't gone to church in years. I was brought up in church. We all fell away from church, and someone had invited me back, and went back and got saved there, ultimately got baptized there, and then ended up being ordained there. And as they say, the rest is history, because I'm still there, and God put me there. and he called me there, and I'm not going anywhere anytime soon.
So you're the associate pastor there.
Yes.
So, associate to associate.
Yeah.
I know what it's like. So, what are some of the roles that you have there?
Maybe it's what I don't do, but no, the primary things. So I oversee kind of like worship, the actual music ministry, the youth, and kind of like the back end, setting up for online services, all of our streaming and video and things that we do behind the scenes. I do a lot of that.
I've often told people, I have a few items on my job description, and then the bottom line is whatever the pastor doesn't want to do.
Exactly. That's pretty much it. That's pretty accurate.
Obviously, we're joking, but I know that you enjoy what you're doing and working there under Pastor James Baldwin, a fantastic pastor.
And he's a terrific man, and he has been just such a blessing to me. The way that he's ministered to me spiritually, but also just the friendship that we've been able to build over the last almost 9 years that I've been involved there. I know him well, I know his family well, and they're all just wonderful people. They really are.
So, as an associate, as a young man that you are, a lot of guys would not go out and do a side hustle because they whether they're lazy or whether they just don't want to. But you kind of have an entrepreneurial type of mentality. So talk a little bit about the reason why you started this and how this whole thing came about, and as well as what you do.
Yeah, well, the business that I own, it's Sparkle and Shine Professional Cleaning Services. So we offer janitorial services for businesses, as well as deep cleaning services and window washing. It's primarily what we do. The idea of it kind of formed a couple years before we had started, and I was getting a call from a friend who's a landlord and said, hey, so-and-so moved out of one of my units. I need some help for cleaning. And I got a few of those calls over a couple years there, and from that, God had started speaking to me about starting a cleaning business. And so I had launched it February of 2020. And I don't think anybody had any idea what was going to happen a month later, that the entire world was basically going to shut down. And so we had launched, and then next thing you know, we were all shutting back down again. And it was honestly kind of confusing there in the start. I was like, oh God, I know you told me to start this. And then just everything was closed down, and nobody couldn't be near anybody, and there's so many uncertainties there at the start of the pandemic. It's like, okay, well then we just kind of got to wait this out, and we'll pick up back momentum. And that fall of 2020, we pretty much kind of relaunched, so to speak, and God's really blessed it since then, I would say. When I started the business, I was 23, which most 23-year-olds don't think about that, and it's kind of true. At that time, most kids are just getting out of college, they're looking for jobs, or maybe moving, but God had this impressed on my heart to start this business, and it's been such a ministry tool. It really has. Not a lot of people realize how much ministry can be done in the marketplace, and how God moves in those arenas, and the relationships that I've built with clients, the connections that I've made, they have all been divine appointments, and God has just tremendously blessed it and has really just shined His favor on it over the last couple of years that we've been in operation.
That's incredible. So one of the questions I often ask, and I'll ask you as well, how do you balance ministry, full-time ministry, working as an associate pastor where you're often maybe the last minute, the pastor can't do this or whatever, and pulls you in? How do you handle that and handle a business and the management of it all?
Well, it does take a lot of prayer, and it requires an intimacy with God, closeness to Him, because honestly, if I didn't have such a strong relationship with God, trying to balance all of these things, those are places where it's so easy for people to burn out not only spiritually, but, vocationally, and, that intimacy with God, that closeness that I have with God really has strengthened me and has given me the knowledge and wisdom, to be able to balance, and to, keep my priorities in line, so to speak. And it does take a lot of organization too, it takes a lot of time management, blocking out time for this and for that, balancing, time with God and time with family and friends, and the time that I'm going to spend on the church and the business. But God has to be first in that. God has to be first in the priority, because He's ultimately the one that should be leading our lives and almost dictating, to speak, where to be and when. And so that's all it ultimately comes down to, is this closeness with Him.
Yeah, that's good. Now, where do you hope to be at in a couple of years with all this stuff that you're doing now?
Well, for the business, we do have a vision of, expansion of services. Right now, we're only servicing a few counties. We want to be able to expand that in the future, and keep building our team with people who are strong, reliable workers that can go out and do the work, so that we can continue to expand. But the aim for me, is to be able to focus my time on the church and the work that I do there and doing God's work. The business kind of just provides for me. It's the way of God providing for me, because at my church, I don't take a salary. And so that business is what, puts food on my table, so to speak. And so, so like I said, God has certainly blessed that. But, just the hopes that in the next few years we keep expanding, moving in different counties, moving different territory, keep adding services, and just letting God do what He does through it.
And what about your role at the church? Where do you see that going in the next few years?
Well, right now, I
assume that you're not going to say you're going to take your boss's job, because
well, no.
that might not go over very well.
No, I don't think that would go very well. No, I know that God's called me to be there. I know that God's called me to be right where I am right now, and the goal is just to keep being faithful in that, keep growing, keep developing, in the skills and the areas that I oversee, in the hopes that God would continue to bless those and expand those different areas as well.
Fantastic. Well, I've enjoyed getting to know you over the last few years in different capacity with the community, and you and your pastor both are a vital part of this community, and I've really enjoyed getting to know both of you, and I just look forward to all that God does through the business as well as through the church.
Amen. Thank you so much, Troy. Appreciate it.
That's all the time we have today. Thanks for watching Joy in the City, True Stories. Let me encourage you to watch other episodes of people and organizations having an impact on our community on ABC 23 at 5:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. every Sunday. You can also catch us each week on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Until then, be encouraged, because God is moving in our city.